The red and blue lights hit my half-built cabin so hard it looked like a crime scene, and for a second I honestly thought someone had died out there. But no, those 3 squad cars' sirens screaming across the quiet shoreline were all for me. And right behind them strutted Brenda Harrington, the HOA president, who'd spent 3 months trying to convince the world that I didn't own the land my own grandfather bought 70 years ago. I remember setting my hammer down, my hands shaking not from guilt, but from the pure disbelief of how far this woman was willing to go. Brenda pointed at me like she'd just caught a fugitive. "That's the squatter," she yelled. "He's building illegally on HOA property." That word squatter hit me like a punch, and for a moment, surrounded by officers gripping their holsters, I wondered if this was the day my quiet dream of living by the lake would just collapse. But this story didn't start with flashing lights. It started 3 months before, on a warm morning when I broke ground on the land my grandfather Henry Reed left me. 20 acres of untouched lakefront tucked beside Crescent Valley Estates, a neighborhood that grew up in the 90s and decided it owned every inch of shoreline it could see. Except my land was never part of any HOA. That detail would have been obvious to anyone who bothered to read a deed, but Brenda had never let something as simple as facts get in her way. Back then I was excited naive, maybe thinking I'd spend my first summer away from the city building a simple off-grid cabin. A wraparound deck, some solar panels, a little dock for the fishing boat I bought on clearance. I'd worked behind a screen for 20 years, and all I wanted was to hear wind through trees, not traffic through concrete. On day 2 of construction, a golf cart came barreling down the dirt trail like a tank with leather seats. Dust everywhere. And out stepped Brenda, 50-something, hair sprayed into a helmet, sunglasses big enough to cover half her face, arms crossed like she was about to fire me from a job I didn't have. "Excuse me," she barked. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I wiped sweat from my eyes, wondering why this stranger was yelling at me. "Building a cabin." "Can I help you?" "This is HOA property," she snapped. "You can't just start construction without board approval." "This isn't HOA property," I said, trying to stay calm. "This land belongs to me." She laughed, a sharp mocking sound that echoed off the pines. "All lakefront access in this area falls under Crescent Valley jurisdiction. Whatever scam you're trying to run, it ends now." Scam. That word simmered in my head long after she stormed off. And that's when the real harassment began. Every morning I'd show up to new violation notices taped to my equipment, some printed on blank computer paper, others scribbled in marker like a kid's summer camp rules. She trespassed constantly, walking onto my land with a clipboard measuring tape and the confidence of a county sheriff, even though she wasn't even close to being one. My trail cameras caught her sneaking across my property at dawn, at dusk, at midnight. One morning I found her right inside my poured foundation. "Brenda," I called out, "you're trespassing again." She jumped like I'd fired a gun. "I'm documenting violations," she sputtered. "The noise from your construction is disturbing our residents." "The nearest house is half a mile away," I said, "and it's 10 a.m. on a Tuesday." "We'll see what our lawyers say," she snapped. Spoiler, the lawyers never came. But the problems did. She brought back up other board members who stood at what they thought was the property line, muttering, pointing, acting like I was building a missile silo. One day she dragged along a guy she introduced as the environmental compliance officer. Pretty sure he was just her nephew wearing a polo shirt 2 sizes too big. The breaking point for me wasn't even the trespassing. It was the new signs hammered into my ground, Crescent Valley Estates, private property. She'd literally come onto my land and claimed it as theirs. That was the day I started carrying my documents everywhere, deed survey maps, water rights dating back to 1952. I had no idea how soon I'd need them. A few days later, Brenda stood on my property again, smirking, arms crossed. "Those signs need to come down," I told her. "Make me," she said. "The real authorities are on their way." And just like that, she'd called the police on me for building on my own land. Which brings us back to the flashing lights and the 3 squad cars crunching across my gravel. I can still see the look on the lead officer's face. Officer Davidson, calm, neutral, but cautious. "Sir," he said, "I'll need to see some ID and any permits you've got for this construction." My heart was hammering. Even if you're innocent, having the police show up with sirens blazing has a way of making you doubt your own reality. And in that moment, I did doubt. A tiny voice whispered, "What if you missed something? What if the HOA really does own this land? What if you've made a huge mistake?" It was ridiculous, but fear doesn't care about logic. I handed over my documents, hands trembling, and watched Davidson flip through each page. Brenda hovered behind him like a victorious general waiting for the enemy to surrender. Then, his eyebrows rose. "Ma'am," he said, turning to Brenda with a tone that could cut glass. "According to these records, this man owns not only this parcel, but the entire riverfront from Marker 7 to Marker 12. Her jaw dropped so wide I swear a bug flew in. "That includes he continued the beach your residents use the hiking trail and the boat launch, which means your HOA has been trespassing on his land for roughly 20 years. The other officers tried not to laugh. One failed. Brenda sputtered something about maintenance and sand deliveries, but it only made things worse. Davidson asked if I wanted to press charges. I didn't yet. I just said I'd be putting up boundary markers. Anyone who crossed them after today would be prosecuted." "You can't do this," Brenda shrieked. "Our community depends on that lake." "Well, I said you should have thought of that before trying to steal my land." Officer Davidson gave her a warning about filing false police reports. Then the cars rolled away, leaving Brenda standing there gripping her clipboard like a life raft in a hurricane. By sunset, the entire Crescent Valley community knew the truth. My phone buzzed nonstop, residents wanting answers, rumors spreading like wildfire. By the next morning, 15 people waited at my build site. No pitchforks, thank God, but plenty of nervous faces. A man in khakis and a tucked-in golf shirt stepped forward. "Mr. Reed," he said, "I'm Jack Sullivan, Vice President of the HOA. We'd like to discuss lake access." "There's nothing to discuss," I told him. "It's my land has been since 1952. He nodded, shot a look toward Brenda, who hovered behind the crowd, pale and defeated, and said they'd be holding an emergency board meeting. Residents, he said, deserved the truth. Brenda, he added, would be preparing a full report explaining how she'd gotten it all so wrong. That meeting, according to my neighbor Tom, was absolute chaos. People shouting, demanding answers. Brenda blaming the previous board, the county me, the weather, anything but herself. It didn't matter. The vote of no confidence was unanimous. She was removed as president on the spot. Jack took over. Honestly, I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Very, very wrong. 3 days later, I started putting up my fence, a simple split-rail design. Nothing fancy, just a clear boundary line. My lawyer suggested private property no trespassing signs, so I added those too. I slept better that night, thinking the worst was behind me. At 2 a.m, my trail camera told me otherwise. Brenda returned, driving her Mercedes like a battering ram. She looped a tow strap around my fence post and hit the gas. The footage shows her car lurching forward, dragging 50 feet of fencing like a deranged parade float before the front end dipped and the whole vehicle slid nose first into a drainage ditch. That was it. No more second chances. I pressed charges. Court day was surreal. Brenda looked small, almost fragile, stripped of the authority she'd clung to like armor. The judge watched the footage twice, shaking his head. "Mrs. Harrington," he said, "you've shown a disturbing pattern of harassment and criminal behavior. Quite shocking for someone in a position of community leadership." Then came the verdict, $12,000 in fines, restitution for the damage, 200 hours of community service, and a restraining order keeping her 500 feet away from my property. She gasped. "I was protecting our community." The judge hit the gavel. "No, you were protecting your ego." And that was it. The fall of Brenda Harrington, the self-appointed queen of Crescent Valley Estates, ended not with applause, not with forgiveness, but with a gavel echoing through the courtroom, and the realization that she'd nearly destroyed herself over land that never belonged to her in the first place. If there's one lesson in all this, it's simple. When someone builds their identity on power, they never truly had the truth, will always take it back.